Around Kansas. I'm Deb Goodrich.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
And you might recognize behind me the iconic work of Frederick Remington. And of course, without the scenery behind Michelle, Frederick Remington would have had no inspiration.
That's right, Deb. I'm not sure many of our viewers know that the famed artist actually spent some time in Kansas in the 1880s, involved in some sheep ranching activity in Butler County.
It's quite the story, and Remington is quite the character. And long before he gained fame as an artist, he tried his hand at sheep ranching in Kansas with a friend and maybe a couple of friends there. They're college boys. And when he was 21 years old, Remington had inherited $10,000, and which was quite a hefty sum of money in those
Hmm.
days. And he decided he wanted to live in the Wild West, before he settled down and, maybe went into business somewhere, got a banking job or whatever kind of indoor deal he was going to do, sit at a desk painting all day, that he wanted to have some adventure. So his friend Camp, I can't, do you remember his first name? Was it Robert Camp? I don't know.
Yes.
Robert. Okay, so
Hmm.
Bobby Camp, his good buddy Bobby Camp, um, was decided he wanted to ranch sheep in Kansas, and the like the economy always, there were up times and there were down times. Well, this was an uptime, not only for cattle but for wool. And we have been talking a lot about wool lately. It seems like every discussion I sit down to with one of my historian buddies, the topic of the wool trade comes up because so closely associated with Santa Fe Trail traffic.
Hmm.
So much of what is going on in the West involves the trade of wool. So these boys think they're going to make a killing raising sheep, and they end up probably raising more cane than sheep, don't they, Michelle?
That is true. Folks, I know this year and a half, a lot of folks have expressed their angst and the boredom they faced, and the stresses they faced during the pandemic, being cooped up at home so much. And I have to tell you, Frederick Remington and his friends found all kinds of interesting ways to combat boredom in Butler County when they were not actively working the sheep. And I think one of my favorites, and it's fascinating, is they engaged in a pastime they called coursing jacks. And literally, these guys, and I really wonder if they were hopped up on some good liquor at the time, but they would take extremely long sticks and they would run after jackrabbits on the prairie. And the whole goal was to touch the jackrabbit with a stick and then run and touch another jackrabbit with the stick to see who could touch the most number of jackrabbits. Well, it's really hilarious because the accounts that are left to us say they very rarely touch the jackrabbits, because when you have men with big sticks running after jackrabbits, the jackrabbits take off like crazy. And of course, they hop around in all kinds of crazy patterns and directions, making it next to impossible to catch them. So I can just see Remington and his friends running around like a bunch, almost looking like a bunch of lunatics on the prairie with great big sticks chasing jackrabbits. And people had to be saying, "What are they doing out there? What is
Seriously.
so gosh darned interesting on the prairie that you're chasing with sticks?"
Remember in Dances with Wolves when the Indians are watching Kevin Costner's character out there and they think he's touched? They had to be
Yes,
thinking the same thing about Remington and Camp and those buddies,
definitely.
because that you got to be nuts. I'm sorry, you got to be nuts to do that. Uh,
Yes,
what what teenage boys and young men won't do simply can't be thought of. That's all there is to it.
yeah.
And there's another story of Remington and his pals causing a disturbance in church, And there was a gentleman in church that for some reason it's reported that Remington had a grudge against. So they're throwing paper wads, they said in the paper, spit wads. They're throwing spit wads at this guy and they get arrested. So they
Yeah.
must have created quite the ruckus. And I read the account of the judge recalling it after Remington became famous, because before he became famous, he's just another rowdy kid out here on the
Mhm.
prairie. Um, they finally dismissed the charges, but they did have to pay cost. They had to pay the
Mhm.
court cost. Um, oh my gosh, talk about, yeah, being bored out of your gourd. How bored do you have to be throwing spit wads and chasing jackrabbits with sticks? I mean, you can see people out shooting jackrabbits, but just chasing them with a stick, I mean, that's just the dumbest thing
Yeah.
I've ever heard of in my life. Counting coup
And
on the jackrabbits.
exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, counting coup on jackrabbits in Kansas. In addition to that, and then the spitballs, another thing that he and his friends did, and I cannot imagine that they wouldn't have gotten arrested for this. They were attending a Christmas concert or event of some kind, and it was held in a community hall. And they had been kind of raising a bit of a ruckus, and they kept being shushed. People were kind of shushing them. And finally, Remington just decided to see what would happen if he yelled, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" And everything kind of came to a halt. People were looking around like, is this really true? Is it not? You have to know, some people see it's Remington, it's, oh, it's that Remington kid. Oh, but some people began to panic. Some people ran out of the building. Some other people jumped out of windows because they really thought there was a fire. And he and his friend Camp, who he and Camp both had attended Yale. I
Right,
mean, so we're
right,
talking well-educated
right,
young men. So these
right.
Yaleys here, these Yaleys are, yelling fire in a crowded hall. I'm really surprised they did not get arrested for that, because that had the potential to cause a human stampede. And
Exactly.
they just thought this was the funniest thing ever. Um, but it's interesting because reading some of the accounts of individuals who came in contact with Remington while he was in Kansas, they said he could be this kind of ne'er do well, kind of, no holds barred, wild young man. And there were others that said he could be extremely thoughtful and introspective. And then there were others that said he also was prone to great fits of melancholy.
He was,
And I
yeah.
and I really wonder if sometimes the activities, whether it be the spitballs or the coursing jacks or yelling fire in a crowded hall, I really wondered if some of it, his friends were not helping instigate it to kind of push him out of his melancholy moods, to lift his spirits. Because if there's one thing we know, it's our friends will go to great lengths to help us overcome our challenges in life. And so maybe perhaps they simply took that role of caretaker of their friend a little too far.
It might have been when he was in, there are stories when he was in Peabody, Kansas, holed up in the hotel and became something of a recluse for a while,
Hmm.
and was severely depressed, and it's something that he had to deal with, and a lot of people, deal with. You and I have had our share,
Hmm.
but creative people do seem to. Um, Maybe have a little more of that than the rest of the population at a whole. So Remington is certainly not unique, but his there's no doubt, and uh, art historians talk about this, how his time in Kansas shaped him and his
Yeah.
perspective, and he loved ranching for maybe the first 6 months. And it was beautiful. He talks about the morning, those dewy mornings and all that poetic stuff.
Hmm.
For the first while, it was really beautiful, and then the reality, this is hard work. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
it ties you down. And
Yes.
for those young men at that point, and especially Remington, who had that, um, that desire to get out and see things, just see things, and have that adventure. Being tied down to ranching just didn't cut it. So they were only in the
Mm-hmm.
ranching business for a couple of years. I found the ad where Remington was offering 500, I think it's pronounced merino. I have friends that pronounce it merino and merino, but I think it's merino sheep. He was selling 500 merino sheep at one whack. So I think he got out of the business
Wow.
at one whack, just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm done. I'm out of here. Bless his heart.
Yeah. Uh, and especially, and when you're in Butler County, and you have some of those wide open spaces there in Butler County, it's
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. But in the wintertime, it can be extremely harsh.
right.
And so to keep those sheep alive in the wintertime, in that part of Kansas, that's a tough and a
It's a
tall
challenge.
order for anyone to fill, especially young men who don't have a whole lot of experience with animal husbandry and ranching. So yeah, definitely it had to be a difficult time. But yeah, I would have given anything to have been able to be in that crowded hall to see who started yelling fire first. And I think I would have been equally interested to have seen Remington and his friends, their reaction. Um, but Deb, actually, if our viewers want to actually see some Remingtons, all they have to do is drive on down south to our sister south of us in Oklahoma, and if they visit Woolaroc, which is the woods, it derives its names from woods, lakes, and rocks. And it was the lodge, and it is now the Lodge Museum, started by Frank Phillips, the oil tycoon. He was a huge Western art collector, and he collected some Remingtons. And so you can actually see Remingtons live in person if you visit the museum at Woolaroc. And I remember when I moved to Oklahoma and I went to Woolaroc for the first time and walked in and was looking through and, was amazed by especially the indigenous pieces they have. But then when I saw, I went, they have Remingtons. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just was in awe. And so, definitely, if you want to see Remingtons and see how Frederick Remington viewed the West and perhaps how Kansas shaped that view, go visit Woolaroc down in Oklahoma.
And the Cowboy Hall of Fame, the Western Heritage Museum and
Yes.
Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City, where our dear
Hmm.
friend Michael Brower is the McCausland curator of something or other, and is a Western art historian. The depth of his knowledge is staggering. He just blows me away every time I spend time with him. And maybe if you're very fortunate, you could get um, Michael to go through the gallery with you or something, because
Yes.
they have a spectacular collection, bronzes and paintings by Remington. And yeah, it's just an incredible man. And it's just pretty cool to think about his Kansas connection. He was only 48 years old when he died, and he died of appendicitis, which, is just, isn't that heartbreaking? That, and the body of work he produced in that short lifetime is just
Hmm.
unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the detail in that painting behind me. It's just incredible.
Hmm.
So, yeah, one of the most incredible Western artists ever. And got a great Kansas connection.
And he was sheep ranching in Kansas and
Sheep
raising a little
ranching.
cane to boot.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Deb Goodrich inviting you to Council Grove on Saturday, August 28th for Military on the Santa Fe Trail. Extensive encampments feature soldiers from the Mexican War, the Civil War, and the Buffalo Soldiers. Speakers include topics of women and medicine along the trail. Visit SantaFeTrail200.com for details. I'll see you there.
In 1821, a trade route was opened from Missouri in the United States across prairies and mountains to Mexico. In 2021, we will mark 200 years of epic conflicts and grand adventures, larger-than-life personalities, and sweeping landscapes. Join us on an historic journey. The Santa Fe Trail lives on.
Find us on social media or santafetrail.org. Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
So this is one of my fall tables, and Michelle knows I love decorating for every season. And I had this beautiful fallscape on the table with the pumpkins and all kinds of stuff. And what more appropriate than a black cat to jump up there? So this is Athena. She's not with us anymore, but man, she was an incredible kitty, and she ruled the roost, and she thought she looked pretty special surrounded by those pumpkins there at Halloween. So I love that picture.
And behind me is my lovely baby. Her full name is Her Royal Majesty Josephine the Only, because she has what I call only child syndrome, meaning there can be no other cats, dogs, or pets of any kind whatsoever in the house because she is Her Royal Majesty. And as you can see, here she is sitting on the kitchen island right in the middle of it, so she can survey the kitchen portion of her kingdom.
Well, as you might imagine, there are dog people and there are cat people. And honestly, they generally fall into those two camps. You don't have a lot of dog and cat people. If you've got a dog and a cat or more in the house, generally somebody in the house is attached to one a little more than the other. So I was just blown away when I came across this children's textbook. It's about science, about animals and biology. It's over 100 years old, and this person was obviously a dog man because he's talking about how dogs are man's best friend, and he's going into the protective aspect and all this stuff. And even though they're related to wolves, they have all these great qualities. So it's a very Victorian attitude and
Hmm.
language. And cats, who are related to lions and tigers and cougars and all those things, are the most vicious of the carnivores. And honestly, when you see Glacier go after a mouse, you might be encouraged to believe that, because that little boy, and Michelle knows our little kitty Glacier,
Hmm.
is the most loving. That cat
Yes.
exists for no other purpose than to just be petted. And he's like attached to Jake like an appendage. But when he goes after a mouse, buddy, the war is on. He's pretty amazing. But this guy's attitude about cats and dogs really was funny.
What I find hilarious is that, he's using this Victorian type language to talk about cat versus dog. But if you look in the Victorian era, one thing that was actually quite common that you read in the newspapers about, and even read in women's diaries and letters, is the phenomenon of the Victorian cat funeral. Women actually held full on funerals for their cats, complete with little cat caskets and coffins, graveside services. I mean, women wearing full mourning for their cats. And folks, we're not talking about spinsters who have no children. We're talking about women who have husbands and families and very full lives, but the cat was really their dearest friend. Now, I fall in both camps. Growing up, my family, we had dogs, and we were very breed specific in my home. We had nothing but Irish setters. So we had a Mac, a Calvin, Duncan, Riley, and Bo. And Bo was our most recent Irish setter who passed a few years ago. And he was a very loving and good boy. But he was every bit as loving as this little stinker right here behind me, as I have seen time and time again. If I'm sick, if I've got the blues, if I'm crying, she comes up and gets right in my face and licks away my tears.
Oh, isn't that precious? Well, we had a dog growing up too, but being farm people generally don't have dogs in the house. And our dog, we called him Lassie, even though it was a boy. We didn't know that Lassie was gender specific, but he was a collie and shepherd mix. So he had the markings of a collie, but the size of a shepherd. So he was bulkier. He was an incredible dog, smarter than any, 9 out of 10 people, and was a true guard dog. He had that the herd mentality of the collie and the protective nature of the shepherd, and we had him for a long, long, long time. So yeah, I can find it in my heart to love a dog, but honest to goodness, cats, because I am gone a lot, because
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a nurturing personality. I tend to be distracted. A cat can pretty much take care of itself, and it will let you know if it needs something. Where a dog might be a little more reticent, a cat
Mm-hmm.
will let you know. So I
Yes.
guess I'm better suited for a cat.
Well, I find it interesting. People talk about how a dog sometimes can be very person specific, but I've discovered, my kitty Josie is very person specific. She's very much my baby. She's
Yeah.
learned to tolerate her daddy, and she tolerates daddy on her own terms. After lunch, my husband will go and lay on in his recliner and take a little nap, and she follows him. She knows when it's nap time after lunch, and she waits for him to get good and reclined and start to fall asleep, and then she jumps up on his tummy, and she stands and kneads with all 4 feet, and kneads and kneads and kneads and kneads, and then she crawls up and plops down on his chest and lays there. And if she doesn't get the requisite amount of attention, she will take a paw and smack him in the face. And so then he's got to acknowledge, it's like, acknowledge my presence and my greatness, human. I am favoring you with my presence. And so, but if I go in and lay in the recliner next to him and lay back, she immediately will jump up, use the table as a bridge, and jump over on me. It's like, okay, my preferred human is here. So thank you. You've served your interim purpose. The preferred human is here.
Oh my goodness. We could tell cat stories all day, but let's take a look to see what our academic friend said 100 years ago.
I will try to remain stable.
Good and quiet. All right. So yes, children. Time for our lessons for the day. Yes, little Frankie over here is not behaving so well, but see if the rest of you can do a little better. Dr. Jake brought home, because we love books, and he brought home this book the other day, A Primer of Scientific Knowledge by Mr. Paul Burt. This was written in 1887.
That's all they knew of science?
Well, I don't know. This may have been first grade. I don't know. It's a kid's, yeah, be quiet. This is a kid's textbook. And it's a great little general knowledge textbook. The illustrations are gorgeous. They're wonderful. In fact, I'll have Michael take some pictures of, they're just, aren't these wonderful, Frank? They're very, very detailed, very nice. What struck me was how not objective Mr. Burt was. So, and especially in discussing dogs and cats. And so we're cat people, and, we have friends who are dog people, and, it's like you're in one camp or the other generally. And so we are sure that Mr. Burt, from nearly, way over 100 years ago, I can't do math, 100 and some odd years ago, would have really appreciated that video. In 1887, Paul Burt wrote a textbook for students called Primer of Scientific Knowledge. The illustrations, according to the publisher, were drawn by our best artist. The little book seems quaint with its descriptions and line drawings, just the kind of adorable little book to put on an antique table for show, and certainly too out of date to be read. But I read it, and while I was impressed with Mr. Burt's broad knowledge of science, I was equally impressed by his lack of objectivity. Take, for example, his treatment of carnivores. The cat family, wrote Burt, the true flesh eaters are those that pursue and kill other mammals. We must place the cats at the head of this division, since they are the best armed with teeth and claws. They are also the most carnivorous. Dogs, in fact, will eat bread, potatoes, etc., but cats, for the most part, despise vegetable food. The cat family comprises the wild beasts that are terrible even to man, the African lion, the jaguar of America, the panther, and the tiger. By comparison, what does he say about carnivorous canines? The dog family. This is the family to which our good dog Jip belongs. It is also well provided with teeth and claws, but the claws are not so well fitted for tearing the flesh of captured animals as are those of the cat family. The author goes on to say that even wolves only attack when really hungry or provoked. We're thinking Burt was a dog man.
Gotta go. I'm Frank.
I'm Deb.
And we'll see you somewhere
Around Kansas.
Howdy, I'm Seth Hayes, and welcome to my hometown, from then to now. Council Grove has a rich history, as deep as the prairie tallgrass. Spend the day visiting 25 historic sites, or explore the unique shops and restaurants, or mosey out of town along the Santa Fe Trail. You all visit my hometown, Council Grove, in the heart of the Flint Hills.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff, like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
Once more, we're having big events at Fort Wallace, or rather the Fort Wallace Museum. The fort's actually gone, but you see a reproduction of some of those buildings behind Michelle.
Yes, you see a little bit of the adjutant's office. You also see the officers' quarters, and of course that Butterfield Overland Dispatch wagon there. And also behind me, over my shoulder, you can see there's actually a diorama of the fort, the fightin'est fort in the West.
Well, we're still the fightingest fort in the West. We
That's
have all
right.
kinds of programming all the time. And this year, in honor of the Santa Fe Trail 200, our theme for all our events has been taking the Smoky Hill Trail to Santa Fe. As the railroad moved westward, the Smoky Hill became a de facto piece of the Santa Fe Trail as freight was offloaded at Hayes or Ellsworth or Sheridan and then freighted down to pick up the trail in various places. So that story is often not known or undertold. And so that's what we're focusing on this year. So our symposium in the spring focused on that, and our encampment that will be held the second weekend of September, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. We'll focus on that theme with reenactors, living historians, and programming. We have speakers coming. And Michelle, one of the things that we try, and I know this means a lot to you, is the educational outreach. We had 900 school kids come last fall. We've got more than 1,200 coming this year.
You
So
know, that's,
Friday, our education day is going to be crazy.
you know, I cannot overstate the importance of making our historic sites and locations come to life for our children. Because these are simply places they read about, or they are words they read on the page. But when they're able to go to a museum, it's one thing to see artifacts from the past in a museum exhibit, to see and read the labels and the interpretive panels. That's only one part of the story. You've got to find a way to bring them to life. And that's where having your living history demonstrations and having those individuals there to help, humanize the artifacts and the places. And I know this is a huge part of what many of our National Park Service sites do in Kansas, especially Fort Scott, Fort Larned in particular, our state historic sites, and those that are privately run, Fort Harker, Fort Hayes, and others, to help people see what life was like in that time period, because it makes a greater impact. And then what we're doing, we're helping our young people make personal connections with history that helps carry them through their lifetime. And if we get to those young folks before they get too overtaken by video games and other things, if we can get them fostering a love for place and for history, they're going to carry that through their lifetime. And so that's one thing that folks, if you've never seen an Education Day event like this, it is amazing. And for the staff at Fort Wallace, at the museum, and the volunteers to be able to help over 1,000 children learn about that history, you have no idea the undertaking that is. It is incredible.
I have to give a shout out to Ramona Zortman, who's on our staff, who is over
Yes.
90. And it is Ramona who contacts all these schools and schedules their appearance, because obviously you don't have 1,000 kids show up at once. We have stations. I think we are having 12 to 15 living history stations that the students will go from one to the other. So that scheduling throughout the day is it's really a logistical nightmare, quite honestly. But Ramona does that and gets the kids there so that they stay with their school group. And it's all organized. They're moving through with their school group. Even last year, when the pandemic was really in full force, we still managed to have this without incident because everybody stayed together. They stayed with their groups. We're outdoors. We had a lot of space available to them. And this year we've got so many that we're doing all day Friday, and we're doing half a day on Saturday to accommodate all the students that are coming. The homeschoolers will come on Saturday. So it's pretty incredible. Also this year, we have a Thursday event with a concert by our dear friend, Michael Martin Murphey. So that evening, he's headed to Red River for the rest of the weekend, but on Thursday night he'll be with us. He's been such a good friend to the Fort Wallace Museum, and of course to the Santa Fe Trail Association, and to sites all over Kansas and the West, and always draws a huge crowd, and people love him, and we love him for being a part of so many of our events.
And do you have boxes of Kleenex so when he sings Wildfire and everyone starts crying that,
Oh my goodness.
you can mop up the tears? I
Uh.
can't, I have Sirius XM satellite radio in my car. And I have, the New Wave, the British New Wave station, and I've got the 80s. And then I have the 70s channel because I was a little kid in the 70s growing up. And I remember hearing Wildfire on the radio and just thinking, oh, it's a nice song about a horsey. And then when I got older and really listened to the words, I mean, like, oh my gosh, every time I hear Wildfire, Michael, I cry in the car, full on ugly cry every time I hear Wildfire on the radio.
It affects a lot of people that way,
It is.
What a timeless song. I mean, it's just as powerful today as it was the day that Michael released it. And of course, there's so many of his hits that I love. Geronimo's Cadillac. Oh man. And I'll tell you what, there's never been a version of Geronimo's Cadillac better than his performance at Fort Wallace in 2017. His sons, Ryan and Brendan, were there with him, and Mo Bringsploonie was with him on stage. And Mo, a lot of people know as an actor, but Mo is a very, very talented musician and singer, was with the group Brûlé for many years, and is just phenomenally talented. And to have that group together doing Geronimo's Cadillac was spectacular. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, Michael always puts terrific musicians together, or when he's doing his lone cowboy hour and it's just him. It really doesn't matter. It's all spectacular. It just maybe has a little different feel, but quality never wanes. It's always amazing.
So what we're saying, folks, is make sure that you get a ticket for the Michael Martin Murphey concert fast, because that will be the hottest ticket of the fall in Western Kansas.
It will, and you can get them on Eventbrite. You can go to Eventbrite. You can visit our Facebook page and figure out how to get those. You can get them at the museum.
Call the museum.
You may even be able to buy them on Facebook. I'm not sure, but I know Eventbrite and at the museum itself, you can get those.
And I want to also echo what you said about Ramona. If you have, folks, if you're watching and you've not had the opportunity to visit Wallace and the Fort Wallace Museum, do yourself a favor and try to make it out for this particular event weekend. You will see what happens when a group of extremely dedicated people who care about preserving and sharing history come together. And Ramona is one of them. And not only does Ramona help organize these school groups and get them all in for the education day, Ramona is also the cookie woman. Ramona is constantly baking cookies. So when you come to the museum to visit on any regular day, if there are cookies offered to you and they are homemade, probably 9 times out of 10, they are Ramona's. Now, I have celiac disease. I can't eat them, but everyone tells me that Ramona makes the most fabulous cookies in the world. And she is absolutely a joy and a delight. So definitely do yourself a favor. Come out to the event, meet all the fine folks like Deb and Jane and everyone else, and Ramona and all the great folks at Fort Wallace at the museum. And also see the museum itself. I've been doing some consulting work with the museum. And let me tell you, the first time I came to the Fort Wallace Museum, And then I had a very long gap in between my visits. And the progress that I had seen in between my two visits was incredible. Just in the last 2 to 3 years, the amount of work that has gone into adding to and enhancing the interpretation at the museum is phenomenal. Do yourselves a favor and go visit. Tell them that Deb and Michelle sent you and that we said they are the best kept jewel or secret in Western Kansas.
Well, I've got to give a shout out to a couple other people too. Patty Lou, who's been working there for years, Patty Locke, whose family was part of creating the museum, just like Jane's was. God, she just keeps everybody in line. And one of the talk about changes and interpretation, on the Saturday, the 11th, we will dedicate the Ruth Jackson Reading Room of the Miles W. Keogh Research Library. So this has been a dream of mine and a dream of the Memorial Association for a long, long time. When plans were made for the museum more than 20 years ago for its expansion, a library was part of that. And so keeping those manuscripts and photos and records so that researchers can have access to those is a huge piece of what we want to do. So we have invited Terry Mort, who is an incredibly accomplished author. If you're not familiar with his work, Google Terry. And he just released a book from Pegasus called Cheyenne Summer. And it's the story of Beecher Island, but it puts Beecher Island in context of Plains Indian Wars and just the bigger picture. And he is an incredible writer. I think Terry lives in Tucson now, but he is coming up and joining us, and we'll have a book signing, and is going to say a few words about how important reading research rooms are to researchers such as himself. We were really pleased to help Terry along the way while he was researching that book. So thrilled that he can join us.
Yes, and Deb, when you shared with me the plans for the library and research room in the reading room, I was so thrilled because and in my time at the museum, coming in and visiting and evaluating, and then also doing research myself, I absolutely adore being able to chit chat with everyone, but it's so nice to be able to have a place to go where when you're doing research, you can kind of get in and you can sit down and you can kind of gather your thoughts and do your work and kind of have a little bit of a cocoon and still be able to look out and kind of see what's going on and feel like you're still connected. But it's really great to have that space because it allows the museum to, as you said, preserve the most important books and documents and photographs and records. And then you share them with researchers. And the more researchers you have coming into your museum, then more people learn about the museum through reading the works of these different researchers. And so it provides just another level of service on the part of the museum that brings more people through the doors. And when you get more people coming through the doors of the museum, it means we have more people going and visiting friends, like our good friend Dawn Allman, who runs the Memory Bank and Trading Company in Wallace, where you can get, if you really need your Java fix, you can go see Dawn at the Memory Bank and get your espresso, you can get your Americano, your latte, your cappuccino, and then look at great antiques. Or you can then, pop over to Sharon Springs and go have lunch in one of the restaurants there. So the museum is a great jumping off point to take you to other places that we hope you will enjoy and visit when you come in September to come to the Michael Martin Murphey concert. And then perhaps spend a day seeing how the museum deals with over 1,000 school children, and then visit with the living historians and individuals who are set up. Now, Deb, who's going to be set up for that weekend?
We have our friend Henry Crawford coming back from Lubbock, Texas, and he brings his buddies with him. So I'm afraid to name them because I'll leave somebody out, but Bill Emmerich and Texas Tim, and I'm not, he's bringing some quality folks with him from Texas. And then we have Fox and Fox Co and Sharon, Paul Houston and his wife Sharon, and Jake's sisters, Jude and Linda, who are the most fun. I think the kids have more fun with them than anybody. They set up a cook stove and they bake bread, and they show them, you know, baking bread, and then they make butter. You know, they have the little jars where the students can shake them up
Whip
and
it
make
up.
butter.
Mhm.
And they have jams, and they just have a ball with the students. And we've got Greg Heller coming from Fort Harker.
Sarge.
Yeah, and we've got blacksmiths, and so yeah, we've just got so many incredible exhibitors setting up, and Brother
Now
Frank
you,
Goodrich will be there.
mhm.
So yeah,
Now
lots of fun folks.
you just need an officer's wife and a laundress, and it's complete.
Well, Michelle, come on up. Marla's going to be there, and I think she's going to be one of our guides, though, and she's going to do a presentation. She's going to do Women on the Santa Fe Trail as one of her presentations, but our laundress can't make it. So if you want to come and be a laundress that weekend, we'd love to have you.
Well, let's hope that this latest surge in, COVID Delta variant calms down. So, we can. Some of us who live with individuals with underlying conditions or immunocompromised folks, let's hope that happens, that this, we beat this back, folks. We beat it back really hard. So then we can go back to doing those things we love, because I would love nothing more than to be a sassy Irish laundress at Fort Wallace, which is something I've done at Fort Scott many, many times, and Fort Larned and other places. I would love to be a sassy Irish laundress at Fort Wallace, because whether the men wanted to admit it or not, laundresses actually really did kind of rule post. There were a lot of things that didn't happen if you were a soldier, if you weren't on the good side of the laundress.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So lots of stuff. Follow us on Facebook. We post a lot of information about our events there, and call the museum. Come by and see us before then. You don't have to wait till September to come and see us. Come on anytime. But yeah, we got a lot going on, and love to see you come September.
Well, my goodness. I think that's about all we have time for today. And we both hope that you will visit the fine folks at Fort Wallace this fall, and definitely take advantage of the events they have taking place, and come and show your love for Kansas history, and take in that concert from Michael Martin Murphey. And wow, tell you what, Wallace, it may be a small town, but they've got great big heart and an amazing story that they love to share with the world.
That's right. So come and find out all about it. Well, I'm Deb.
And I'm Michelle.
And we've loved being with you, and we will see you somewhere around Kansas.
Kansas.
Bye-bye.